What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Joe Fleetwood Podcast. And today we're talking about one of the most powerful businessmen that you've probably never heard about in American media. But behind the scenes, he changed the entire EV game. His name, Wang Chuanfu. This is the guy who built BYD, which stands for Build Your Own Dreams. And what started as a small battery company would eventually become one of the biggest EV companies in the world. When most people think about EV cars, they think about Tesla and Elon Musk. But while everyone was watching Silicon Valley, this quiet engineer in China was building an industrial empire. And the crazy part is, Wang didn't come from wealth. He grew up in the poorest part of China. He wasn't a billionaire kid or some celebrity entrepreneur. He literally was an orphan who grew up in the poorest part of China and became obsessed with chemistry and batteries. Wang was born in 1966 in Anhui Province, China. Now, during this time, China was not heavily developed. There weren't any large skyscrapers or luxury homes. And Wang had a pretty tough childhood. He lost both of his parents, leaving him and his siblings in severe financial ruin. His older brother reportedly helped raise him and invest in his education because his family believed that education was the way to go. Now imagine growing up in those kind of conditions and still becoming one of the richest people in the world. Now, to me, what I think is one of the most important parts of this story is that people believe that success comes from being well connected and rich. But Wang came successful through technical knowledge, discipline, and a long-term vision. During his studies, he focused heavily on chemistry and engineering. Eventually, he would attend Central South University, where he would focus again and get a master's degree on battery-related chemistry. Now, this is important because batteries would eventually become the center of everything that BYD does. So let's take a minute to think about everything that batteries are involved in: phones, computers, military systems, electric vehicles, energy storage, and AI infrastructure. The future was always going to depend on batteries, and Wang saw that before most people would. So in the mid-1990s, Wang started BYD. At first, the company wasn't making cars. They were making rechargeable batteries. And this is where the story gets crazy. Japan was actually dominating the manufacturing battery industry during this time, and companies like Sony were major players. But Wang believed that Chinese manufacturers could compete by doing things a lot different. Now, instead of using expensive automated labor, Wang relied on human labor. That sounds backwards today, but it allowed BYD to have massive cuts in costs. China had a huge labor force available, so BYD built batteries were cheaper while still improving quality. And eventually they started supplying batteries to mobile phones and other electronics. At one point, BYD became the biggest manufacturer in the world when it came to batteries. So think about this. Before electric vehicles began to explode, BYD was already focusing on the most important part of an electric vehicle, which is the battery. Because while traditional companies understood engine, transmission, and the dealership, BYD understood energy. Completely different mindset. Now, here's where people thought Wang Chuanfu was absolutely crazy. Now, in 2003, BYD bought a struggling car company called Qinshan Auto. People laughed at him, and a lot of investors thought it made no sense. They basically wanted to know, why would a battery company buy a car company? But Wang understood something that nobody else did. He knew that electric cars would eventually replace gasoline cars. And if batteries were the future, BYD already owned the most important component. So instead of waiting around, BYD jumped right into automotives. Now, their earlier cars, of course, were not that impressive. A lot of people said that the earlier BYD designs looked like Toyotas. Quality wasn't world-class yet, but Wang wasn't focused on perfection at first. He was focused on scale. He wanted manufacturing capabilities, he wanted supply chains, and he wanted a vertical integration. And that's another reason why BYD was so dangerous. BYD controlled a huge portion of its own product, not like a lot of automotive companies that have to import different parts of the car. They own the batteries, the semiconductors, the electric motors, and also vehicle assembly. A lot of companies, like I said, depend on outside suppliers, but BYD increasingly built internally. That gives them more control over costs and production speed. Now, one of the biggest moments in BYD history came in 2008, and that's when Warren Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway, invested hundreds of millions of dollars into BYD. Now, understand something. Warren Buffett is known for it being extremely careful when it comes to money. He doesn't just throw money around. So when Buffett invested in BYD, people began to pay attention globally. Buffett's partner, Charlie Munger, praised Wang Chuanfu heavily. Munger once described Wang as a mixture of Thomas Edison and Jack Welch. And to him at the time, that was a huge statement of highest praise, basically saying Wang had both engineering genius and executive leadership abilities. And suddenly, this Chinese battery company became a serious global industry player. Now, fast forward to 2010 to 2020. The electrical vehicle war begins. Tesla becomes the face of EV innovation in America. But while Tesla was focused heavily on branding, software, and high-end innovation, BYD focused on manufacturing and scaling. Different philosophies. Tesla built excitement, BYD built infrastructure, and eventually BYD started exploding globally. Electric buses, affordable EVs, battery systems, hybrid vehicles, commercial transportation, and eventually BYD started selling massive amount of cars. Now here's something a lot of people don't understand. The EV market in China is massive. We're talking millions upon millions of vehicles, and BYD became one of the most dominant players in the game. Eventually, BYD would surpass Tesla in certain global metrics, and that shocked a lot of people, because most Americans still barely knew who Wang Chuanfu was. Meanwhile, he was building the biggest industrial EV company on earth. Now, let's talk about the real secret weapon that is BYD, the Blade battery. This became BYD's most talked about technology. One of the major issues with electric vehicles has always been battery safety. People worry about fires, overheating, explosions, battery degradation. BYD focused heavy on lithium iron phosphate batteries, often called LFP batteries. Now, compared to some other batteries, LFP batteries are generally safer and more stable. Blade battery design became known for its durability and safety. BYD started marketing demonstrations, showing puncture tests and extreme stress tests. Now, whether you love or hate EVs, you cannot deny that batteries are becoming one of the most strategic, important technologies in the world. And BYD positioned itself perfectly early on. Phones, cars, power grids, military applications, renewable energy. Everything is connected to some type of energy storage. And this is why Wang's background in batteries matters so much. He wasn't just building cars. He was building energy systems. Now, here's where the conversation gets bigger than just cars. BYD represents something larger, global industrial competition. Right now, countries are fighting over semiconductor manufacturing, battery supply chain, rare earth mineral, artificial intelligence, and energy dominance in general. And China made a massive push to EV technology years ago. The United States is still trying to play catch up when it comes to manufacturing. Europe is trying to protect its auto industry, and everybody understands that the next economic battle may revolve around energy and manufacturing capabilities. So when people look at BYD, they're not just looking at a car company. They're looking at a symbol of China's industrial rise. And Wang Chuanfu is one of the architects behind that transformation. Regardless of politics, there's a lesson entrepreneurs can learn from Wang. Number one, technical knowledge always matters. A lot of people chase trends without understanding the technology. Wang understood batteries deeply, and that gave him leverage. Number two, long-term thinking wins. BYD didn't become a success overnight. This took decades, and most people quit too early. Number three, manufacturing still matters. A lot of businesses, they focus on apps, marketing, and social media. But industrial power comes from making things, factories, supply chains, engineering, production, and that's where BYD is dangerous. And number four, quiet execution beats loud branding. While the world focused on celebrity CEOs, Wang stayed relatively quiet and kept building. That's something a lot of people underestimate. So when you hear BYD, understand that this wasn't an overnight success story. This is decades of engineering, manufacturing, battery research, and strategic planning. Wang went from growing up poor in China to becoming one of the most important industrial leaders in modern history. And whether people realize this or not, the future of transportation, energy storage, battery technology is going to impact everybody. Cars, homes, power grids, AI systems, all the systems I named earlier on in this show. And BYD positioned itself right at the center of that future. So that's it for today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed this story on BYD and Wang Chuanfu. If you did, make sure you like, share, and hit that subscribe button. If you're watching this on YouTube, I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. Peace.